Hi, my name is Armando Carvajal, and I am the program director here at the New Chip Accelerator. I wanted to share my thoughts on this amazing book, Perfectioneur, written by Kara Crossway-Brindle. It's an absolutely amazing read. And I can say that not just being a perfectioneur myself, but I can say that being somebody who's plugged into the startup ecosystem here in Austin, Texas, but also around the world. Perfectioneur, From Workaholic to Well Balanced, is a book that instantly spoke to me as an individual. Why? Because as soon as I read that I was on the road, on the path to collapse, I realized that I needed to change something. And that is exactly what this book demonstrated to me. It demonstrated that there are very specific personality types out there who are perfectionists and who are entrepreneurs. And we are the kind of people who will do anything, absolutely anything, to get the praise, the recognition, to make that impact in the world, only to put everything else that matters at stake. And then when we actually receive that reward and that praise, we shy away from it. We say, oh, it's what I should have done anyway. And this book has shown me, that you need to stop doing that. You need to stop doing that because you're only hurting yourself, not just as a human who needs to live balanced life, but also as an entrepreneur who is working hard to achieve greatness. Perfectioneur is a read that I think anybody who is involved in entrepreneurship, or anybody who is in a role of leadership, anybody who strives to make an impact absolutely needs to read. And I say that because being part of this accelerator and seeing startups every single day, hundreds, thousands of startups from around the world, I see the same trends again and again and again. You have entrepreneurs or perfectionists who cannot seem to say no, who cannot seem to ask for help, who cannot seem to celebrate their successes, however small. And this is a massive challenge because, as Kara describes in her book, people, namely perfectioneurs, who embody these behaviors, these trends, are destroying themselves. And that's the last thing you want. If you're trying to make an impact, if you're trying to change the world as an entrepreneur, you don't want to do so at the cost of your life. You don't want to die on the hill. You actually want to live to see that impact and continue making many more impacts. One of the things that really spoke to me immediately is the notion that the irony of receiving compliments. And that really spoke to me as an individual because I see this all the time, not just with startups, but also in the corporate world. We strive, we toil, we yearn for the compliments, for the praise, for the recognition. We do it almost subconsciously. It's what drives us. The specific personality types, the Enneagram 3s, perfectionists, the people who are perfectioneurs. This is what we do. We want that recognition, even though we might not be saying we want it. We want it. And by the time that we achieve it, when we actually get it, whether it's at the office or at some special ceremony or in the public spheres, the news, a magazine, whatever it is, we get that recognition, we immediately shy away from it. It's like we don't want to acknowledge it. It's like we don't want to receive it. And that's a very big problem. And that's something I'd never even thought about, that Perfectioneur, the book, taught me. By not actually accepting that feedback, by not actually accepting that compliment, that reward that we've basically given our everything to achieve, we are doing ourselves a massive, massive disservice that is going to impact us in a very profound way that we may not understand in the moment. It'll create resentment. It'll create self-doubt. I didn't know this. I absolutely did not know this. And I am guilty as charged of doing this all the time. I work for the compliments. I work for the praise, the recognition. And when I finally get it, oh, it's all right. I should have done that. It's expected of me. It's what I should have done. I don't need the praise, even though deep down it's what I've wanted all along. This is a very big challenge. And we see this all the time, especially in our culture, because we think that we need to be very humble and that we need to not accept all the praise and compliments because it makes us seem cocky, which can be true, but there has to be a balance. And I think Perfectioneur talks about that extensively. Finding that balance, finding that way to combine the needs and wants within every Perfectioneur. Another thing that really stood out to me from Perfectioneur is the role of vulnerability in leadership and wellness. I think vulnerability is something that a lot of people shy away from in general. But in the startup world, with entrepreneurs, namely Perfectioneurs, we don't want to seem vulnerable. It's the last thing we want. We want everybody to see us as strong. We want to be seen as courageous, brave individuals who will never be seen as vulnerable. And contrary to belief, you need to make yourself vulnerable. You absolutely need to make yourself vulnerable. Perfectioneur drives this point home. Vulnerability is going to make you feel authentic. It's going to make you somebody that people can relate to. And in the startup world, especially for entrepreneurs who are trying to get customers, for entrepreneurs who are trying to get investors, for entrepreneurs who are trying to tell a story that can make other people identify, you need to be vulnerable. And this is something that, again, is not obvious. That's not clear and cut to most people, let alone Perfectioneurs. I think this book makes you realize in that moment that this is so important. This is critical for you to take on. I can't recommend this book enough. And I love books. I read books all the time. This was a very quick read. I was able to read Perfectioneur in one sitting on a Saturday afternoon, about 3 hours. It's very well written. It's easy to digest, and it has some exercises after some of the chapters that force you to question, to understand who you are as an individual and the impact that you are making in your life, internally and also externally, and figure out if that path that you're on right now will lead you to collapse or to success. I recommend this book for any entrepreneur. I recommend this for creatives also. I recommend it for millennials because I think this is really a study on how a lot of millennials think about success, how a lot of millennials think about how they should be in the workplace, in the workbook. So again, thank you so much, Kara, for writing this book. It's absolutely fantastic. I've already started to apply a lot of the lessons that I learned from this book. I'm already starting to check myself every day, asking myself, am I on the path to collapse or am I on the path to long-term sustainable success where I feel okay, where I'm not jumping out of the window? I've also started to implement a routine of making myself vulnerable, not asking for a pity parade, but making myself vulnerable, sharing things that can make people see beyond the onion layers, make them understand where I'm coming from, and people relate. The other thing that I've also focused on doing is something that Kara really talks about that's so important, especially for entrepreneurs. Making sure that you understand who is in your orbit. Who's in your orbit is a concept that you may hear in different ways. You're the average of every 5 people with whom you spend your time with. Who's in your orbit is so important for Perfectioneurs to understand, simply because if you are on the path to collapse, oftentimes it's the result. It's the result of being around people who are putting you on that path. You are on the path to mental exhaustion, to your business running out, to basically hurting yourself physically because of the overexertion. You need to reassess who is in your orbit. Are they serving you, or are you basically just serving them all the time? And this is something that Perfectioneur has taught me to every day ask myself, who is in my orbit? Who is actually helping me turn my goals, my vision, my dreams into a reality? Who isn't? For the people that actually matter, the people that I actually need to have in my life, how much time am I giving them? Am I giving them enough time? If not, I need to schedule more time. And that's something that Kara mentions very clearly in Perfectioneur. Schedule more time with the people that matter most. And then assess also the other people in your orbit. Who are the people that are draining your energy? Who are the people that are making things worse? Who are the people that somehow always manage to turn your life into a nightmare? And those are the people that you actually have to start phasing out of your orbit. Kara is very clear about this. Again, it's so important. Taking those little steps so that you can achieve that balance, so you can achieve that paradigm shift in mentality from being a workaholic, a type A, who has to get everything right, who has to work, who has to be the subject or the victim of this notion of busyness, always busy. From going from that to somebody who's well balanced, somebody who's actually making an impact, getting things done effectively and efficiently, but is not on a pathway to collapse. So once again, thank you so much, Kara. This is an absolutely amazing read. And I highly recommend it. I absolutely recommend it. If you're a entrepreneur, a creative, a millennial, you need to read this book. You need to read Perfectioneur.